Alrighty, welcome to episode 236. Wow, of Backpacking America. We're doing a little Instagram live too, while we're live on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. For my Instagram audience, I do apologize that the audio quality is not as great. I do have a special microphone coming in just for Instagram, so you're gonna have to bear with the shitty quality. Today we're going to be talking about freedom as a concept. So, in the lead up to July 4th, which we may have a special guest, he will be returning, Tom Shalero. He is the host of Your Island with Tom Shalero on LI News Radio, WRCN 103.9 FM. And we're going to be doing a special historical episode commemorating the holiday and talking about all of the really cool the really cool aspects of how July 4th went down as a historical event and what it means today. So, the title of this episode today is Freedom as Reality and Concept. So, one of the things, first off, shout out to my boy Jeff that joined. Shout out to Kevin Goff out there. You the champ. Now you're the champ. I love you. Mr. Arsol flexing. I'm flexing back at you. I love you, bro. That's my mom joining in. I love you, mom. How are you? So today, like, I wanted to talk about the concept of it, right? So, I mean, recently we saw the Supreme Court make a bunch of different decisions, and we see the government making a bunch of different decisions, and it leaves people questioning. And one of the questions that was brought up this week that I thought was very interesting, that was pondered by SCOTUS, which is the Supreme Court of the United States of America, is do you have a right to reject someone from doing business with you? Meaning, are you allowed as a business owner to refuse service to someone because of their sexual orientation? And I honestly, the question that they posed was this woman that she ran a website design company, and one of her clients wanted something done for a gay wedding, and she was like, "Nah, I don't really believe in that. I'm an evangelical. Um, sorry guys." And they were like, nah, that's, against stare decisis, that the precedent was set in 2011. We're the baker that didn't want to bake the gay cake, the gay wedding cake, had to bake the cake. Well, the Supreme Court ruled against that and turned it over. Said, no, it's against that individual's liberty to be forced to do something that they don't want to do. They don't believe religiously that homosexuality should be allowed. And they have the right to not serve that gay couple. I personally disagree with that decision because it goes against the freedom of everyone to uh, get a service done. It's a very tricky argument. I can see both sides of it. And questions like these that get brought up often change the notion of what is freedom. What is it in reality and what is it as a concept? Freedom as a concept is you can do whatever you want. Freedom as a in reality is much more complex and has a lot of responsibilities and has a lot of philosophical, technical, and moral components to it. On one hand, I can understand the point of view of the website designer and the baker. I look at it from my perspective as a multimedia multimedia consultant and business owner. And, if I don't want to work with someone because of something they believe in, say they're Nazis. I don't want to work with a Nazi. I'm not going to say you're a Nazi. I'm not going to work with you. I'm just going to be like, I don't think I could do the job. I'm overbooked. But what this Supreme Court ruling is saying is that I can explicitly say, no, you're a Nazi. I don't want to work with you. Um, my concern, though, with this is I'm afraid we're going to start seeing signs in diners and, in restaurants and stores and places of businesses that say gay's not welcome, black's not welcome, uh, colored only, white only. That's something that concerns me greatly is where will this decision lead us? Now, Roe v. Wade was overturned, and we saw how that panned out over the last year, where a lot of states, some surprising. I can't believe my computer just made that stupid noise. I do apologize for those of you on the other live streams that are listening right now, and to our podcast consumers on Spotify and Apple Podcasts for that. Bing. I have to cut that out. So, but my point was that you know, where's this going to lead us, right? So with Roe v. Wade, a lot of states that you thought would never codify abortion into law did. And some of them were Republican majority states, like Kansas. They put abortion into their state constitution through a general referendum. That's freedom. That's democracy. The people spoke and they said, no, we want this. And in other case, the people said, no, we don't want this. But at the same time, there are women in that in those states that are like, well, I understand the majority doesn't agree with my decision to get an abortion or my ability to choose, but it's my body, it's my choice. So it kind of comes down to the notion, and I feel like America is now at this crossroads where they say where the logic is like, okay, are we choosing collective freedom, national freedom? Are we choosing freedom by the tyranny of the majority? Or are we choosing freedom of the individual at the expense of the collective? And I feel like for the past at least century, at least 100 years, 70, 80 years, the United States has kind of saddled the middle road of it, where it's like we must balance, you know, uh, we must balance the collective and we must balance the individual. But we're at a crossroads now where there's two extremes, and one of them's going to win out. Now, one of my friends in the chat here just said, "Well, first of all, thanks to my boy Jeff for saying to get that bread going. You always know it, sir." My boy Aiden right there in the chat, he said, "Fuck it, legalize everything." In a way, I kind of feel like that would make sense. I mean, ultimate freedom is the way to go, right? Like I can't really like me as a person, like I've always been an outsider. I've always been a um someone that hasn't really fit in anywhere. So for me to make a broad stroke segment of saying, you know, we need to have a collectivist freedom, a collective freedom. We need to say, we either need to definitively make it so that person A can't do this and person B can't do that. I think it's really up to the individual. But then it comes back to the question of, well, what about if I want to work with someone or don't want to work with someone? Personally, I think it should be illegal to not work with someone based on their sexual or racial background, or their religious background, or their political background. If you don't want to work with the person, just say you can't do the job, because that's what people do. Now, if you own a restaurant or something, you can't deny someone based on the color of their skin, but you can weed out the type of person you have in your restaurant with dress code saying, okay, like you can't wear Jordans or sandals or bikinis or, that you have to wear business attire or suit or you have to wear a suit. That's how people kind of work around it. What's my boy Aiden saying? The people wish to do lines and commit tax fraud. Let them eat cake. Also, very well said. Thank you, sir. Um, I do agree. Let them do lines and commit tax fraud. Fuck the IRS. All my homies hate the IRS for real. And fuck the ATF especially. It's July 4th. Let us blow shit up. Anyway, in all seriousness, in all seriousness, um, I personally I see it as those are my concerns. Like if you wanna weed out certain clientele, I get it. Like, for me personally, you know, one thing that I've noticed in the podcasting world is a lot of these podcast studios are run by people that are smoking pot all the time. They look ghetto as fuck. Um, they have no business sense. Like, I don't wanna work with people like that. But that's a type of person. That's not a racial category. I think that judging someone based on their race, personally, I don't even think you're gonna survive in business, especially in today's world, because desegregation has permanently changed the way this country is operating, and having a black only or a white only or a Latino only business is not enough to survive. We all need each other to continue to make more money. Um, People have started to make more money and technological advancements started to explode when desegregation ended because we were able to trade with each other. The two Americas merged into one. So, you know, that's why this Supreme Court ruling is very concerning to me. Personally, I think that if the woman if the woman didn't want to do the web development for that gay couple, or the baker didn't want to bake that fucking cake, just be like, "Yo, like we're having some backlogs, we're having this, we're having that. Sorry." And if you feel that uncomfortable with working for gay people or black people or Latinos or Republicans or Democrats, maybe you should rethink why you're in business in the first place. I think personally, if you're in business, um, if you're in business to satisfy a political agenda and only cater to a certain racial or religious clientele, you're going to fail and you should not be in business. Now, if that's your choice, so be it. And it seems to be a legal choice now. Uh, but it is very concerning. And this kind of just brings us back to the notion of collective freedom versus individual freedom. Is the Supreme Court in the right by, passing decisions like Roe v. Wade and this new decision? I mean, abolishing Roe v. Wade and passing and allowing this new decision. What is freedom? Freedom conceptually is I can do whatever I want and I can be whoever I want and do business with whoever I want. But at the same time, is it really? What are the consequences of that? Because now the consequences are, if you're for total liberty, that must mean you're okay with segregation. It must mean you're okay with, me saying, I don't want to work with a black person. Goodbye. That's what it means. If it's total freedom, or a black person even saying to a white person, I don't want to work with a white person. Goodbye. I don't want to employ you. I don't want to be in the same room as you. I want to have a segregated space. That's total liberty, where individuals or communities can come together and push someone else out. And then collective liberty is, you have freedoms as an individual up until the point where you suppress another person's liberty. You suppress another person's dignity, or or your rights trample the rights of another. And that was decided by the Supreme Court. Like, once your rights trample the rights of another person, that is no longer constitutionally protected. Everyone's rights have to be accepted and accommodated towards. So that's my major. I'm more on board with that. As much as I'm on board with, you know, individual liberties, there's downsides to it. And then collective liberties, there's downsides to it too. Where, now that Roe v. Wade is overturned and it's up to the states, if you get, a party, if you're, Republican or Democratic Party or third party even is against abortion and wants to take it and wants to either shut down any referendum attempt or attempt to take it out of the state's constitution, they may be successful, and that is impeding upon now people's individual liberties. So that's a downside. Or with the Supreme Court did with Roe v. Wade, that's a downside to the individual because now the individual is now up to the mercy of states, of all the states. And in Louisiana, Florida, Texas, I believe Georgia, South Carolina, and Tennessee, and Arkansas, and Oklahoma, they're all, a lot of those states banned it or severely limited. So if you're a woman in those states, it's going to be pretty bad. Now, abortions fell by 3% in the entire United States. And I'm not sure how accurate that number is, but it fell about 3%. So 3% of those women either were like, okay, I want to have a kid, or they were denied the care that they would have gotten if Roe v. Wade was still in force, and that would have been their personal decision. Honestly, I know the abortion debate is very, and this is another part of what is freedom, concept reality, right? You know, it's my body, I could do whatever I want. But to the pro-lifers, they're like, well, that's also a life. So to them, they're saying, oh, like, this is a human being in there, and you're impeding on their liberty to life and the pursuit of happiness by getting rid of that child. And, pro choice people like myself will say, well, scientifically, that's not really a person. It doesn't have the ability to think or feel yet. And, we kind of feel like the mother has more of a choice in the matter because she has to now raise this child. And if that child is born into a family that's not ready to accept it, what life is that child really going to live? Um, so it's really also considering too, like, what is personage and what is not personage. That's what freedom is. It's to decide to what extent does freedom flow and what becomes tyrannical, because the abortion debate really is a debate between freedom and tyranny, and both sides see it as inverted. Pro-choice people see, the removal of the restriction of abortion as a tyranny, and pro-lifers see it as a liberty because now the life of the child is protected And it's not like the mother's getting, well, in some states, actually, you could get put to death if you get an abortion. So I can't even say that. Um, but then, to the pro-lifers with Roe v. Wade existing and abortions being prevalent, that was tyrannical because they see, unborn babies as is full-fledged human beings with legal rights. Now, there is also the great point that they bring up where, well, if there's a pregnant woman walking down the street and she gets shot and murdered, it used to count, at least in New York, it used to count as a double homicide. But, that messed with the abortion law, so they changed it. Now, I don't know how it is in other states. And don't quote me on that because I don't know the exact law. I have to ask Tom Shalero about that. He's actually really good. If you guys want to listen to his show, once again, that's 103.9 FM, Atlantis Radio, and that's Monday to Friday, 12 to 2 p.m. Um, but yeah, he used to be a police officer, and he told me, he's like, yeah, like if there was a pregnant woman that got killed, we used to charge that as a double homicide. We used to count the unborn baby as a full person. So it really comes down to personage and human and rights and what who is who and what is what. Now, you know, liberty itself and why is there a car alarm going? I don't even know. I don't even know. Um, Sorry about that, guys. So anyway, I thought that was my car. So when it comes down to liberty, right? It's a very tricky subject to navigate because they're both arguments, whatever it is, whether it be the Supreme Court ruling in favor of the woman that didn't want to build the website for the gay couple, uh, ruling against the guy that wanted to bake the cake, ruling against Roe v. Wade, and then for it in the 1970s. It's a very uh I just got an alert from my mother on the live stream that it was my dad's car alarm and that all is well. Okay, cool. As long as we're not getting robbed or my car window isn't getting broken for the loose change in the cup holder. Uh, I have a special tactic to hide my loose change that I'm not sharing with you guys, by the way. Anyway, liberty is a very interesting concept. There's also the age old question of you can't shout fire in a movie theater. So that was a very famous Supreme Court precedent that was set in the 70s or the 80s, and basically it said you can say you have the right to freedom of speech, but when it endangers the life and safety and property of another person. Maybe property wasn't put in there, don't quote me. But, uh, when it threatens another person's liberty, when your speech, when your rights threaten another person, uh, that's when your rights are no longer protected. They're no longer rights because now it's an infringement. So that's really how the United States has been moving forward through the 20th and into the early part of the 21st century is that. But now we're starting to see a shakeup. I feel like we're kind of going back to the old days of the libertarian-esque uh, viewpoint of the 1800s. Um, in Total Liberty, for example, in this quest for liberty, we've also seen the Bruen versus New York State decision get decided on by the Supreme Court, where the United States now has a national ruling, right? So the Supreme Court of the United States ruled against New York State and said you cannot have may issue concealed carry permits. People don't need to establish a cause for why they want to have a sidearm and a concealed carry. And, the problem with New York State too is that it said um, you cannot, under any circumstances, use self-defense as a reason for why you want a concealed carry permit. So that was their problem. They're like, no, Americans have a constitutional right to self defense in the United States Constitution, and that is unalienable is an unalienable right. So New York State now is hit with may issue. They not may issue. They're hit with a shall issue. You shall issue concealed carry permits. You must make it so that people can apply. Now, are they finding ways to fuck around with where you can carry your concealed firearm and how long it takes? Yes. Is it illegal? Yes. According to Section 400 of the New York State Penal Code, um, if it is over 6 months, if you apply for a pistol permit and it takes longer than 6 months, the issuing authority must write you a letter giving you a valid reason as to why it is taking more than 6 months to get your pistol permit or a rejection letter for your pistol permit. And it has to be a valid reason. It can't just be, "Oh, we're backed up," or, "Oh, we're understaffed." It is that is not it. It is illegal, and many police departments around the state, specifically the Suffolk County Police Department, is violating that law and is essentially committing a crime. So, you can sue after 6 months. Basically, that's also a liberty thing, right? So some people will say, like, the anti-gunner, and I am very pro-gun. I am always pro-gun in my thoughts and my actions and such, but, uh, I will acknowledge both sides of the argument, and I can be objective. Uh, for the anti-gun side of it, it's, because of the rate of gun violence and the mass, that the fact that they're the choice of mass shooters and criminals, they're the first weapon. They see it as guns being used now as a suppression of liberty, and they see it as, well, the mass proliferation of guns in the United States is infringing upon my rights as an American citizen to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and pursuit of property as well. Um, where now I have to live in fear and be afraid of talking the wrong way or being in the wrong place at the wrong time, for fear of getting killed. To the pro-gun side of it, it's if you ban guns or you restrict guns, you're restricting my ability to defend myself and provide for my family through hunting, and through self-defense and through defense of the nation. So you are preventing collective and individual security and defense from being implemented. And taking guns from someone requires the armed wing of the state to come and physically confiscate them, or will require more interaction with government and bringing in guns closer with government, and a lot of people feel, afraid of that because government is by nature tyrannical to many on the pro-gun side of the issue. So it comes down to the individualistic aspect of it of, this is hurting me, and then the collective aspect of it where this is hurting the country. And, it's really a wage of, with the gun issue, it's an issue, it's a tricky one. Personally, I don't think it's hurting the country. I don't think arms are hurting the country. I think mental illness is hurting the country. I think there's a problem where we're over medicating people. We are poisoning food, we are harming other people through our words and our actions. The economy is collapsing. I feel like what we're seeing with the mass shooting problem, it's not a question of liberty, it's a question of health. So when we're looking at this, personally, I see this more on the um I think guns being enshrined as a collective and individual right is very, very essential to the survival of the United States, uh, both from foreign intervention and domestic terrorism. We've seen a lot of, guys that have concealed carry permits or they have rifles in an open carry state stop mass shooters. And, mass shooters are a very small percentage of gun owners, and they're usually very new gun owners too. So when we look at them, this is another thing with the mass shooter as well. The mass shooter has always been flagged has always been flagged as a risk for doing something dangerous in the future. It has always been, killing animals, hurting people, bullying people, making weird things in their basement, um, threatening people like as young as like 7, 8, 9, 10, sometimes 12, and then they're in middle school and it's like, yo, these kids are like actually insane, and they are going to kill someone. Like we should do something about it. Problem is, the schools don't wanna do anything about it. Now, of course, it comes down to individual liberty too, like, can you force someone to get treated? But at the same time, if someone's genuinely very sick, maybe they should be pushed towards it, The thing is too, you're also a minor, and when you're a minor, you don't have rights that you would have as an adult. Do your rights as a person and a human and an American citizen end at the schoolhouse gate? No. But I don't think forcing mental health on a child, not medication, but you need to sit with a therapist every day. And we need to talk to your parents about, why you're lighting fires in the bathroom, or why you're trying to burn ants alive with a magnifying glass, or why you're trying to kill chipmunks with your bare hands, or why you're beating little Sally every gym class. These are things that mass shooters do, or drawing really messed up pictures at 16 years old of you shooting up a school. These are things that need to be like, you need to swarm in on this person and make sure they're not a threat. So that's the other end of freedom. The reality of it, like conceptually, I could do whatever I want, who cares? The reality of it, it requires responsibility. And I think that with all these issues, when it came to abortion, the gay rights thing, the gun rights thing, it all comes down to responsibility of the collective and the individual. So with freedom comes great responsibility, and that's not to be corny or gay or whatever, but it's true. Um, I'm a full proponent of this. Like when it comes to, we want to have Second Amendment rights in an age of mass shootings. Well, then we need to really take care of the kids. We really need to give them opportunities. We need to build community for them. And we need to jump on kids that are a problem and presenting problems when they're very young. So that way we can mitigate them. Some people need to be medicated. That is absolutely true. There's no doubt in my mind that some people need medication. Do I think everyone needs to be medicated? No. Do I think a lot of these problems are exacerbated because of medication? Yes. I think though that with problem kids like that, they need to be put in therapy right away and every day in school, and that needs to be part of their education is learning how to be good human beings. I think there should be for certain ages, I think there should be mandatory after school programs where you're in the building from 7 to 5 p.m., 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. and you're getting fed three meals a day and you're interacting with other kids, you're playing with other kids, you're learning with other kids, you're working with other kids. And I think that would be really good for children. I'm going to be very honest. I don't think you should be sitting in the classroom for 12 hours a day, but I think, maybe the first 5 should be in the classroom and the rest should be playing and learning how to build as a community. And then I feel like that would end a lot of the school shooting problems, especially because these kids are going to be around more therapists, they're going to be around teachers, they're going to be around security guards, they're going to be around cops, they're going to be around, parents can all should be able to also come to these after school events to be with their kids and see them interact. I think it would be a great way to bring the community in it too. I don't think it should just be the state control, talking to the kids. I think, after 1:30 or 2 o'clock, the parents should be on campus and welcomed. I think that would be great. And feeding the kids three meals a day, 3 good meals a day would be beneficial massively and would probably cut down the the school shootings in the country because you're giving kids home and community. And maybe the weird kid that no one likes is actually just maybe a little shy and people have, more respect for that child. Um, I really just I really think that that's the best way to solve the mass shooting crisis is giving everyone community. Like I said, that's the responsibility aspect of it. When it comes to abortions, right? Pro-lifers, they want to be they're like, no, the life of the child matters. Okay, but what about foster? What about foster kids? What about like foster system? What about social services? What about the high rate of poverty? I mean, just down the street, Mastic Beach is at 18.8% poverty, and the average income is 39,000 per person. So, how are people, living? They're living horribly. We need to build a system that, you know, i- sorry, my camera just shut off for some reason. Um, yeah, it's back now. We need to build a system if in those states, if you want to get rid of abortion, you need to build a system that takes care of mothers with maternity leave and state aid and helping low income families survive so they aren't enticed to get an abortion. Because a lot of people get abortions not because they want to end the pregnancy, but because they can't afford it and it's scary. Or sometimes it's not even down to money. They're 16 or 17 or 19 or they're in college and they're just like, I just had like a one night stand or I just lost my virginity to my high school sweetheart and we didn't want a kid yet. We're like kids. Or like we're very young adults and we don't know what we're doing. Like, help, you know? And there's, some of these pro-choice, pro-life people, they are so militant with it. They want to get rid of contraceptive completely. It's like, dude, not for nothing. If you're against abortion, you gotta kind of meet in the middle where it's like, okay, like you can have all the contraceptive in the world and all this stuff, but if you have the kid, that's it. But we got you with this. I think a lot of people would be like, all right, that's at least fair. I'm pro-choice all the way. It's just like a philosophical thing. Even if we did have a state like that, I think it should always be a choice for someone. I just don't think it would be nearly as prolific as it is now. And even now, it's not that prolific. Um, but it would be very, very rare to have an abortion in the United States if that maternity leave, state aid, and all that other stuff for low income families was a real thing. And actually changing the definition to low income based on a per capita basis, not a family basis. Per capita meaning individual. The average income for an individual in the United States is 55,000, but really it's a lot lower. It's in the 35s. So, and I'm talking about more about young people like myself. So, young people, really, you should start cutting off the aid per capita once you hit $75,000 a year. Because in Long Island, $75,000 a year, you're actually like middle income, you're okay. 50,000, it's a decent amount of money, but it's tight. It's tight. Because after taxes, you come home with 35,000 because in the tax bracket that we're in, from 0 to I believe 95,000, it's 15 grand gets taken out every year. It's 38%. So with federal and state. So you got to be we got to be very careful with like how things are done. Now I know of course with social programs things cost more money, but also how we do social programs is we pay administrators a fuckload of money for, services that are eh. We need to cut administrators and cut their budgets because and I mean their salaries because that money can go to actually providing the service, which it should be. Not saying that people running the services should starve, but they shouldn't be the owners of brand new Mercedes. I think that's insane. Again, like when we're coming down to freedom, right? That's responsibility. If you want to protect the life and liberty of the unborn child, those are things you should be doing. Um, you look at what was the other example I did? I covered the gun one, cover that with the gay cake thing. Honestly, the responsibility in it is just saying to the person that you can't do the job, not judging them based on their sexuality. And really, if you feel like you have to do that, um, it is your choice as a business owner. No one should force you to run a business in a certain way, but no one should also allow you to openly discriminate against someone based on their racial or sexual orientation, as well as the other orientations that are out there, be it political or religious. I personally think you're going to go out of business if you're going to keep restricting access to people. I think that if you restrict access to people that are into your business, you're cutting out whole segments of the American population. And say you only cater to white people as a restaurant owner, right? There's still gonna be a segment of white people that aren't gonna eat at your restaurant because they're like, "Yo, you're racist as fuck." Like, what is that? Now, will there be people that eat at the restaurant? Of course, but you're not gonna be making as much as you can, and you're gonna be denying yourself to this intellectual input from whole other groups of people that walk different walks of life. I mean, you know, I don't mean to sound woke or anything, but I think diversity is a strength. I think forced diversity is fucked up, where it's like, like the woke version of it. But I think being around other people and just existing in the same space where you could play off each other's different experiences. A black person and a white person have two very different experiences in the United States, and as such, they have two different modes of viewing things and learning about life and interacting with life and their employers. So I personally think, and even with business too, you talk to a black business owner and a white business owner, and they're going to have two very different things to say about the same type of business or the same type of process, and they're gonna have two different upbringings. And those are both very unique perspectives to have in a world where business runs, and this is a business-centric country, and I think it's very bad business for that web developer and that baker to deny serving people that are gay or deny or in the future even denying people service because of the color of their skin, their religious preference, or their political background. So that's basically my food for thought. So this week up until July 4th, it's going to be very America themed, very freedom themed, very contemplative. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little episode. I am still trying to figure out a regular streaming time. I am tentatively looking at 9 p.m. Tentatively, because that just seems to be the direction everything's going in. But I will actually make a post about it uh, when I on my Instagrams, and you will all know about it um, leading up to that actual launch date. So I will inform everyone when we go live. Once again, thank you to everyone listening to episode 236. I hope everyone enjoyed it, took something away. For my Instagram people, I think this is going to get posted on Instagram after I end the live button. So definitely comment. Let me know what you think. Regardless, hit me up on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever. Comment what you think about the episode. And, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the various topics. Thanks again, and until next time.